Representative Elissa Slotkin. She is a Democratic Congresswoman from Michigan, I believe, right? And she
New York. Oh, Elissa Slotkin. Sorry. Yep. Yes.
And she's a former CIA Middle East analyst. And she's on with Poppy Harlow on CNN.
I'd like to change topics if I could, Congresswoman, before you go and ask you about the ongoing violence between Israeli forces and Hamas and what has come out of a number of progressives within your party that would like to hear the Biden administration speak more forcefully against Israel than it has. And I thought it was notable that the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, just a few hours ago reiterated Israel's right to defend itself, as the U.S. has always said. But he went on to say, I believe Israel as a democracy has an extra burden to do everything possible to avoid civilian casualties. Your Democratic colleague in the House, Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman, tweeted this: Israel targeting media sources is so the world can't see Israel's war crimes led by the apartheid-in-chief Netanyahu. Those are incredibly strong words. What is your response to her? Do you agree with those progressives in your party on this?
Well, listen, I mean, I don't think anyone likes to see what's going on their televisions. It's devastating right now. And I'm literally getting texts and messages from people saying, please make sure that there's awareness on what's going on here, frankly, on both sides of the issue. I think that this issue, again, becomes something where we just sort of play back and forth. It's like ping pong. And, what I'm seeing right now is civilians losing their lives on both sides. What I see right now are people trying to defend themselves, first and foremost in Israel, but also now inside of Israel. There are gangs and roving sort of groups of thugs that are threatening and beating people up. I mean, it is devastating to watch. And I think the more we say you have to come down on one side or the other, the more we lose sight of this systemic problem when people don't have a two-state solution.
So just to be very clear for our viewers, are you saying then you do not believe the Biden administration position and word choice should change at all here? You're comfortable with the statements coming out of the administration?
I think people need to read them for what they are, which is Israel has a right to defend itself and the Palestinians have a right to live in security and safety, and all human beings have dignity. And that, I believe, is what they're trying to say. That is what I am saying, certainly. And I think that's extremely lost in the debate right now.
I mean, the idea that the critique is only about the rhetoric on both sides, that there is no addressing of the material realities. Look, the United States can try and pressure Hamas all it wants. There is no, and to the extent that they can, they are. They are arming the Israelis. They are providing Israelis with warplanes and missiles and guns and targeting. All of these things have been provided by the United States. That is acting as a mechanism to attempt to discipline the Palestinian people. Let's be honest here. They've killed more civilians than they have militants. And so and they have hit civilian targets, like we just saw with that building, for instance. Nobody's expressed any military value there, just the fact that Hamas may have had an office in there. So the United States is certainly exerting influence on the Palestinian people. It is doing it through its proxy, Israel, but it is not exercising any influence on Israel. None. And that is, well, that's the point, is that if you don't want to address this, if you don't want to address it, but you also realize that you have to address it, you talk about the rhetoric on both sides.
Right.
Or you talk about the rhetoric on one side, because the rhetoric is irrelevant. The relevance is, what can the United States do to influence the supposed outcome that you want in this instance? And it is quite easy. It can say to Israel, you cease your flights, you cease the bombing,
or we retract our aid. I mean, that's what
your
gets
aid
lost
is
in
tied
this conversation.
To this. And you stop dispossessing Palestinians.
We sold them more arms.
Yeah.
We just sold them more arms. I mean, that's what of course, you know, honestly, that's better than what would have come out of an Elissa Slotkin type 6 years ago, by the way.
Yes, that's true.
But it's of course woefully insufficient for all these reasons that you just stated. I've said this point before, but I think it's a good lens to look at this through. When you both sides this conflict, right? Or conflict. When you both sides this apartheid and you make it as if there's just, they can't get along, two sides that are just both fighting, and there's, you know, it's so complicated, right? It obscures the power dynamics in such a way that you're doing what right-wingers did in this country, talking about police brutality when you said Black Lives Matter and you say all lives matter, right?
Right.
You are not looking at the issue. You are actually sapping the conversation of the necessary context to move forward in a productive way. And that's by design by people like Elissa Slotkin, who obviously has a history, she was a CIA representative in the Middle East. This is not going to be the person who's going to change the conversation around Israel-Palestine. But, you know, I mean, that's what that kind of talk is designed to do, but it's given some sort of credence as if she's saying anything remotely substantive or relevant to addressing what's the root of what's happening there.